Picture yourself in a quiet Florentine study, a small wooden desk, a quill lifted from a shallow inkwell. The candles flame barely flickering as the city breathes beyond thick stone walls. On the 3rd day of May, 1469, in Florence, under a pale sky that would brighten slowly over the Arno, Niccolo Machiavelli entered a world tuned to delicate balances of power. Streets of worn sandstone, workshops opening one shutter at a time, church bells measuring the air. All of it steady, all of it provisional. In these rooms and in these alleys, he would learn that history moves like a careful pedestrian. One measured step, then another, sometimes stopping, sometimes abruptly turning. And tonight we let those early scenes arrive as morning light does, gently, without hurry. Florence in the late 15th century stood amid neighboring powers. Milan to the north, Venice by the waters, the Papal States to the south, each calculating, each adjusting, each listening for opportunity. Merchants counted ledgers, envoys traded news, condottieri measured the price of courage. After decades of uneasy balance, alliances could realign in an afternoon, as if the chessboard itself had learned to slide. Under the Medici, civic life glowed with patronage and pageantry, yet even splendor wore a cautious face. Niccolo's Florence observed how a promise today might be a rumor tomorrow, how a friendship at dawn could fade by dusk. He would watch quietly at first as Fortuna, turned like a gust of wind in a narrow street, surprising those who mistook yesterday's weather for tomorrow's. And now we turn the page, to notice how his attention sharpened whenever the city shifted. When armies crossed passes and banners appeared at gates, when sermons inflamed piazzas, when a distant monarch cast a long shadow across Tuscany, the lesson was the same. What arrives by chance must be met by preparation. Educated in grammar, rhetoric, and Latin, the young Machiavelli learned the secret corridors inside language, the way a sentence can carry a plan, the way a well-chosen word can steady a crowd. He copied declensions and turned Ciceronian periods like smooth stones in his hands, discovering how rhythm persuades. In the pages of Livy's histories, he walked among Roman legends and stubborn consuls. In Sallust, he studied the fever and the cure of public life. These were not merely tales to him, they were instruments, quiet tools to tune judgment. He saw that memory could be a workshop where future actions are built, piece by piece, with patient hands. As one candle dims, another is lit. From language he turned to prudence, from stories to strategy, learning that the past is a mentor who speaks softly but precisely. From these beginnings, two currents met in his mind. One he would call Virtù, not virtue in the sermon's sense, but a flexible strength, a practiced readiness, the art of shaping events when they begin to turn. The other was Fortuna, chance, weather, the swollen river that can flood or nourish. In Florence, he saw both every week, careful shopkeepers and sudden storms, patient plans and unexpected knocks at the city gate. Let us drift to the next room of thought. Preparation is a form of calm, and calm is a kind of power. To read the world, to steady the hand, to wait without stiffness. These were early lessons, like light entering a quiet room and revealing what is already there. And so this first scene settles. A boy of 1469, a study of wood and paper, a city of stone and breath, and the whisper of two forces that will guide his pages. We move from palaces to piazzas, unhurried, carrying only this: when fortune stirs, preparation answers, and the city grows still again. In 1513, for 6 unhurried months in the low hills near Sant'Andrea in Percussina, Niccolo Machiavelli turned his daily letters and notes into a patient outline of power. The noise of Florence receded, like a market closing at dusk, and the day arranged itself into simple shapes: a path to walk, a page to fill, a lamp to trim. Before this quiet, there were 14 years of motion, from 1498 to 1512, serving the Florentine Republic as a steady pair of eyes and hands. He crossed thresholds of courts and encampments, learning the temperature of rooms and the weight of words. He watched commanders assemble ranks at first light, and he noted how promises altered their color by afternoon. And now we turn the page. In the winter of 1502, he stood near the decisions of Cesare Borgia, the Duke of Valentinois, and felt how swift resolve could gather scattered chances into a temporary order. Not far away, at other times, he witnessed how delay unraveled plans, how a day lost to hesitation could invite a week of misfortune. From France, he reported the manners of a king's council. From the German lands, the slow machinery of an emperor's intention. He learned that power breathes differently in every climate, yet always inhales prudence and exhales display. Let us drift to the next room of thought. In each dispatch, he harvested lessons the way one gathers olives, branch by branch, patient, accepting that some fruit resists the hand until the proper moment. From these travels, a theme thickened like a thread on a loom. Arrangements that rested on hired swords trembled. Arrangements that rested on patient preparation stood. The Republic asked him to build a citizen militia in 1506, and he set about it with the care of a surveyor measuring a field. He wrote quietly that mercenaries serve themselves first and abandon in foul weather, while those who are rooted in the soil defend with a different breath. He watched campaigns in the Romagna and traced the line between appearance and capacity. Banners could be bright, but the march could still be slow. Speeches could be polished, but supply wagons might lag by a day. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath. Each observation filed itself in memory, not as gossip, but as usable pattern, the sort that can be lifted gently from one scene and set down in another. Where we, earlier, spoke of virtue as prepared strength, he saw its opposite in the soft habits of courts that relied on luck to finish their sentences. And in Fortuna's gusts, he noticed that those who had rehearsed contingencies did not steady the wind, but they steadied themselves. The stream widens, and we float with it. Then the tide turned in 1512, and with the return of old powers, his service ended. He withdrew to the countryside, not in bitterness, but in a posture of listening. His days became regular, morning paths among hedges, small talk in a rustic doorway, the scratch of quill after sunset. In an evening letter that December, he described changing from the dust of daytime into the neatness of study, as if crossing a threshold from earth to thought. He entered the company of the ancients, not as a student repeating lessons, but as a colleague asking questions, and he wrote. As one candle dims, another is lit. Out of this stillness, a short book took shape, addressed to a new prince, concise as a blade, practical, unsentimental, meant to be handled. Alongside it, he sketched broader reflections on commonwealths, where laws, customs, and collective courage braid into longevity. The first was small and sharp, the second wide and windproof. Both were forged from the same metal, the alloy of experience cooled by contemplation. He did not hurry the cooling. He let the ink settle the way a millpond settles after a tossed pebble, until the mirror clears and the edges of things become distinct. We move from palaces to piazzas, unhurried, from embassies to a farmhouse table. There he realized that speed belongs to events, but durability belongs to form. A day of battles can teach one rule. A season of silence can preserve it. In the hush of Sant'Andrea, Virtù returned to its workable meaning, readiness with a steady hand, and Fortuna returned to its honest face, conditions that must be met, not cursed. He faced neither as an enemy, but as partners in a craft that rewards patience. And now we turn the page. From 14 years of observation and 1 year of quiet, the outline of his teaching formed. Cultivate what you can govern in yourself, read the weather you cannot command, and design institutions that bend without breaking. Let that thought rest as we consider how a modest room, a rough desk, and regular hours can do what courts could not. Slow time until judgment becomes clear. The quiet turning is this. The diplomat becomes the observer the writer, the patient tutor of future readers. We arrive gently at our resting shore. Hold the simple image, a page laid flat, ink darkening to calm black, a hand lifting only when the line is finished. In that pause, thought becomes durable, and the next chapter can begin with an even breath. At the third watch of the night, with a small book open to a leaf marked in the margin XXV, and 3 thin threads tucked as bookmarks, the question before us is ordinary and patient. How to remain steady when luck turns. Tonight we walk with that quiet question, unhurried, like mariners tracing a coastline with a fingertip across 9 handspans of parchment. Machiavelli calls one current in our lives virtù, not mere moral goodness, but the practiced capacity to see change early and to answer it with skill, courage, and prudence. The other current is Fortuna, the shifting weather of events, arriving like wind from no fixed quarter, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, with no regard for our plans. Good governance, he suggests, is seamanship in uncertain weather. You trim the sail, you hold the tiller straight, you build your harbor walls before the storm, and when a fair opening appears, you move. And now we turn the page, not to hurried answers, but to the slow craft of preparation, the kind that keeps a vessel upright when clouds stack along the horizon. Virtù, in this practical sense, is attention. It is the steady eye that notices the first ripple on otherwise flat water, the almost silent tightening of a line that tells you the wind has veered a few degrees. Machiavelli does not ask us to be perfect. He asks us to be awake to the changing pattern of the hour. In one famous chapter, he observes that people succeed when their manner fits the times, and they fail when they do not adjust. Some natures move cautiously, others boldly. But the sea does not tailor itself to our temperament. So virtù is the willingness to alter one's tack, to reef when gusts stiffen, to let out the cloth when a corridor of wind invites speed. It is a discipline learned in small motions, checking knots, sounding depth, keeping charts, before any crisis arrives. This is prudence without panic, courage without noise. It is the art of being prepared to do the right kind of thing at the right kind of time, even when the sky says nothing out loud. Let us drift to the next room of thought, where the weather itself, Fortuna, demands its due. Fortuna is not an enemy to curse, it is the climate to understand. Machiavelli likens its force to overwhelming waters elsewhere, yet his deeper point is engineering. You do not command the storm, but you can build the shape that meets it. Institutions are that shape. Laws, offices, and habits of citizenship act like breakwaters and harbor moles, structures placed in fair, whether so they may hold in foul. A city that relies on spectacle is like a ship in bright paint, but with a shallow keel. The first swell tests what lies beneath the gloss. He favors arrangements that bend without breaking, procedures that allow debate and correction, leadership that can be replaced without tearing the hull, a civic spirit that drills like a crew until movement becomes quiet skill. In his broader reflections, he argues that conflict, when channeled by good orders, can cleanse like a tide, bringing in what is needed and carrying off what has grown stale. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath, we notice how Prudence designs before danger and repairs after it, never trusting calm seas to remain, never fearing rough ones to last forever. And so we return to the helmsman's posture, relaxed hands, steady gaze, modest course corrections. Good governance, Machiavelli whispers, is a choreography of 3 movements. First, watchfulness, seeing the early signal in people's moods, in rivalries, in the timing of opportunity. Second, preparedness, routines and institutions laid like stone and timber, your harbor works, so that sudden weather finds you ready. Third, decisiveness, when fortune opens a channel, you pass through without dithering, not recklessly, but with a practiced calm. None of this guarantees triumph. It grants steadiness. It is a way of moving with the world's rhythm rather than against it. Keep this simple image close. A vessel trimmed just right, sliding over a long, low swell, neither fighting nor surrendering, only steering. That is Virtù answering Fortuna. And now we turn the page, letting the wake smooth itself, as we prepare, gently, for the next thought to arrive like a soft breeze at daybreak. In 1532, gathered into 26 brief chapters, a small book called The Prince slipped into print, suggesting that what seems like simple goodness actually asks for a slow, patient arrangement of appearances to support order. He does not hurry us. He asks instead how a ruler keeps a community from fraying, how laws and force, character and reputation can be braided without snapping the cord. The counsel is practical and calm. Cultivate the look of virtue, of mercy, fidelity, humanity, uprightness, and piety, while preserving the inner capacity to act decisively when the time compels it. The point is not showmanship. It is predictability. A population sleeps better when its governor appears steady and good, and will sleep better still if, beneath the velvet, there is a hand strong enough to stop a tear in the fabric. And now we turn the page. The book's rhythm is unadorned, outcomes not intentions, stability not noise. He returns to a theme we already hold gently in mind, prepared strength meeting uncertain weather, and he applies it to the art of ruling. The mask must calm, and the muscles beneath must be trained. Let that frame settle, like a curtain lowering softly across a window at dusk. From this stillness, details can speak without strain. He distinguishes two instruments of rule, laws and force. To rely on laws is to act as a human being. To reserve force is to act, when required, as a creature of sinew. Thus the ruler must learn, he says, to be both a fox and a lion, the fox to sense snares, the lion to frighten wolves. Everyone can see what you seem to be. Few can grasp what you are. Because public sight is shallow and fragile, appearances are the quiet scaffolding of order. So he advises the prince to appear merciful and faithful, while keeping a disciplined readiness to depart from that appearance when necessity, not whim, demands it. This is not a call to constant deceit. It is a sober guard against the sharp turns of fortune we have already come to respect. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath, he adds, arms secure laws. Without a capacity to enforce, statutes are phrases. With a trained hand, the parchment gains weight. The wise ruler binds himself to the many rather than a few grandees, because the many typically desire not to be oppressed, while the few often desire to oppress. Aligning with the many becomes a living fortress, steadier than stone. Let us drift to the next room of thought. Severity, he cautions, must be rare and exact, like a single stitch closing a seam. Cruelties well used, his hard phrase, are those committed at once and for a clear end, after which the ruler turns to benefits gradually, allowing time to soothe and trust to take root. Cruelties ill-used are those repeated, uncertain, and purposeless, which breed fear first and then hatred. Better to be feared than loved, if one must choose, he writes, yet it is best of all to avoid hatred. How to avoid it? Touch not the property or the honor of your subjects. Keep punishments predictable. When severity is necessary, let it be administered through offices and established procedures, so that the wound seems to come from law, not appetite. He illustrates with a sober tale from Romagna. To pacify a turbulent province, a hard man was set to restore order. Once calm returned, the hard hand was publicly removed, signaling that harshness belonged to a moment now past, and that the ruler's face would henceforth be mild. The lesson is not theatrical cruelty, it is timing, one bitter taste to disinfect, then measured sweetness to heal. As one candle dims, another is lit. The aim is not glory, the aim is a quiet street at night. All of this returns us to the central duet we have been hearing, prepared capacity meeting shifting circumstance. But now, played on the strings of reputation and rule. Appearances are like the smooth surface of a well-made table. People gather there and relax because it looks firm and clean. Capacity is the unseen carpentry, the joints, the hidden nails that keep it from wobbling when weight is set down. Laws provide the regular pattern, the measured distances between chairs. Force is the reserve kept in another room, available if the gathering grows unruly. Use the reserve rarely, he advises, and when you do, make it clear, limited, and final. And always return to the table, predictable procedures, public promises kept as far as the times allow, and a face that invites calm. The stream widens, and we float with it. Appearances secure trust, capacity secures safety, and together they secure rest. If we must hold one phrase, hold this. Avoid hatred, prefer clear law, and keep a quiet strength behind the curtain for necessary moments. In that balance, outcomes grow steady, and stability becomes an ordinary comfort. We arrive gently at our resting shore. In a square 30 paces across, under low arches worn smooth by hands and rain, a bell marks the 6th hour with 3 unhurried strokes, and the city exhales. The simple truth about stability takes exactly 1 quiet minute to understand. Prepare slowly, act briefly, review gently. Machiavelli, reading Rome through Livy, offers this rhythm to civic life with a craftsman's patience. Ordered laws, shared burdens, and citizens trained to defend what they love. These are not slogans, but habits that fit the hand. Think of a wooden chest near the doorway, stocked in fair weather. Think of a short list on a folded page. Think of an evening ledger checked before sleep. Preparation first. Action only when needed. Review while the coals dim. He teaches that prudence is not a sudden performance. It is a measured gait on familiar stones. It is a routine so calm that panic finds no purchase. And in that calm, Virtù becomes ordinary, like water placed by the bedside, ready before thirst is felt. And now we turn the page. We move from palaces to piazzas unhurried. In the discourses on Livy, especially the early books, the counsel is plain. Rely on citizens, not mercenaries. Bind courage to law. Make defense a duty, not a contract. Mercenaries chase their own seasons. Citizens remember the harvest, the roof, the school, things they cannot abandon. So the city sets a steady drum. On the first Sunday of each month, practice in the meadow beyond the gate. Keep arms clean. Learn to stand with neighbors. He would echo this in a dialogue on war, urging forms of drill that felt like tending a field rather than staging a parade. The point is quiet. When many share the work of safety, few need to shout. And laws hold the center. Offices are arranged so that those who must decide can hear those who must endure. In Rome, tribunes existed so the common voice could press against the noble will without breaking the city apart. Shared responsibility spreads the weight. A single beam does not carry the roof. A line of beams does, fitted and braced. The stream widens, and we float with it. What does this mean for a day, for a household, for one attentive mind? Prepare before storms. Reward steady work. Invite disagreement that improves the rule. Preparation can be small and exact. A list of 3 provisions to check each week. A brief drill rehearsed with the same neighbors at the same hour. A review of accounts with 2 sets of eyes, not 1. Reward should honor the consistent hand. The artisan who keeps tools sharp. The clerk who balances the column. The captain who trains in clear weather rather than boasting in thunder. And disagreement becomes a channel, not a flood. Set times to challenge proposals. Require reasons in plain words. Protect the speaker, not the insult. In Rome's story, contention inside firm walls strengthened the frame. So too in a workshop or council, a measured counterargument is like a weight on a loom, tightening the weave. Practical wisdom, then, is an abacus on the table. You slide one bead at a time. You do not throw the frame. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath. A leader, a city, and a single person all gain by routines that make prudence easy and panic unlikely. Prepare slowly. Stock what you will need. Train while the sky is clear. Decide what matters before noise arrives. Act briefly. When the hour comes, do the small necessary thing without ceremony. Review gently. Invite a second view, correct the ledger, thank the habit that held. This is Virtù as a daily gait, and Fortuna as a weather understood. The garden stays tended, not by heroics, but by the quiet calendar of hands that know their work. We arrive gently at our resting shore, prepare slowly, act briefly, review gently, and let the city and the self sleep in earned stability. Imagine paint drying, and then imagine the even slower drying of a constitution, layer by careful layer, settling into the grain of a people across long years and quiet rooms. In that patient stillness, Machiavelli's pages continue to seep like a thin primer, unseen yet binding, guiding hands that build laws meant to last beyond any single face. And now, we turn the page. In 1748, in Geneva, a magistrate named Montesquieu released The Spirit of Laws, a book that studied how powers could be divided so that liberty would breathe without gasping. Echoes of Rome and of Machiavelli's discourses hum within its careful architecture. A few decades later, Jean-Jacques Rousseau would gently suggest that under the veil of advising princes, Machiavelli was teaching peoples how to be free, instructing them to read power without fear. Let those bells sound far away and regular, measured and calm, as we drift from palaces to piazzas, unhurried. Machiavelli asked how laws might channel ambition instead of denying it, as a mill race guides water that would otherwise flood the field. In the Roman stories he loved, the quarrels between orders, patricians and plebeians, were not a scandal but a resource when given form, when tribunes and assemblies turned noise into navigation. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath, later designers kept listening to that idea. Do not wish away rivalry, give it corridors, thresholds, and locks. In 1788, James Madison wrote in Federalist No. 51, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. A sentence like a small brass gear in a clock, quiet, precise, durable. It is the same craft we traced earlier, not the denial of human motion, but its redirection. Not the banishment of storms, but canals, levees, and sluice gates that make energy serve order. And so, we can gently turn our attention to the sober study of necessity, where drama is replaced by steadiness. From republics to Realpolitik, the thread is taut but soft to the hand. After the age of city-states, thinkers of reason of state gathered the lesson that rulers must see the world as it is, not as sermons wish it to be. In 1853, Ludwig von Rothschild popularized a word, Realpolitik, to name that realist posture, a kind of clear glass in the window of policy. The stream widens, and we float with it. Statesmen like Bismarck spoke of the careful arrangement of forces, not for spectacle, but for balance. Later, in 1948, Hans Morgenthau's Politics Among Nations would describe power as a currency to be counted, weighed, and hedged. Yet beneath the ledger is Machiavelli's quiet counsel. Meet necessity without noise. Keep means proportional. Aim for predictable order over theatrical victory. Picture a watchmaker's bench at dusk. Springs are tightened, then loosened by a hair. The goal is not excitement, but timekeeping. So too, policy that lasts avoids the fever of the moment and prefers the cool arithmetic of consequences. And now, we turn the page to the present, where planners still ask, how do we design institutions that outlast personalities, and how do citizens sustain liberty over time? The answers arrive like distant bells, regular, never hurried. Laws that channel ambition into service. Staggered terms so no single wave overturns the pier. Independent courts that speak slowly. Professional civil services that remember procedures when memories fade. Public finances placed behind transparent glass, so temptation sees itself and slows. Let us drift to the next room of thought. Citizens keep liberty not with heat, but with habits, showing up, rotating responsibility, rewarding restraint, and expecting leaders to prepare in fair weather for foul. This is the lesson carried from Florence to forums everywhere. Design for the wind, not against its existence. Prefer sturdiness to splendor. Trust the long weave of the civic fabric over the brilliance of a single thread. In small, steady words, the legacy reads, build forms that guide human energy, meet necessity without drama and let time do the polishing. We arrive gently at our resting shore. On an ordinary Thursday, at a wooden table smudged with ink, 3 quiet acts, reading a page, copying a passage, and walking the same short circuit of streets, became a method for steadying the mind. Hidden in those unremarkable motions is the heart of our lesson tonight. Human nature is mixed, time is changeable, and tranquility grows from preparation and modest expectations. We have followed these threads across a long tapestry, and now we draw them together slowly, as if guiding a shuttle through a loom, one measured pass at a time. Virtù, we have said, is the inner steadiness that meets Fortuna without surprise. It is the calm hand that does not tremble when the hour turns. In the city and in the self, routines of learning, service, and measured speech keep the waters, within and around us, beautifully still. And now we turn the page. Let us drift to the next room of thought. Human nature, mixed as it is, asks for gentle design rather than wishful fantasies. Machiavelli remarks that in a community there are 2 temperaments, those who seek to command, and those who wish not to be commanded, an observation he places plainly in The Prince, chapter 9. To see this clearly is not to grow cynical, it is to grow precise. When we expect a blend of motives rather than purity, our speech can become slower, our choices less fragile. The practical lesson is simple enough to practice by lamplight. Speak in measured phrases, ask brief, direct questions, name interests without blame. In institutional life, that might mean councils with fixed procedures and short agendas. In personal life, it might mean writing a calm summary before decisions. Where the mix is acknowledged, extremes have fewer places to hide. From principle to practice, with the same calm breath, and so we can gently turn our attention to time, which is changeable. In The Prince, chapter 25, he counsels that methods suit some seasons and not others, and that prudence is the art of altering one's manner when the hour demands it. If the era favors caution, the steady hand prospers. If it favors bold strokes, then timely boldness is the gentle key. To live this without alarm, imagine a clock's pendulum. It swings predictably, yet never loses its center. Your habits, prepared in quieter moments, form that center. Keep a small ledger of risks and resources. Review it at regular intervals. Adjust 1 or 2 things, not 10. In the discourses on Livy, he praises arrangements that can be repaired without tearing the whole cloth. So too in the self. Revise one routine at a time, like a gardener trimming a single hedge, not the whole garden at once. Let that thought rest, as we consider the calm that follows preparation. Tranquility, then, is not the absence of events, but the presence of preparation and modest expectations. Virtù is a settled posture, learned, practiced, quiet, that meets Fortuna without surprise. Keep routines that teach the hands and the voice. A page read with attention, a short note written to clarify aims, a modest service offered to the common good, a conversation kept short and kind. Memory remains your workshop, past examples laid out like well-arranged tools, ready to guide the next small cut. Hold close this closing image. A harbor at night, lanterns steady along the pier. Ships come and go, but the moorings are sound. We have gathered the threads, human nature mixed, time changeable, peace arising from preparation, and tied them with a simple knot. Practice what steadies you, and expect no miracle but the slow reward of habit. We arrive, gently, at our resting shore.